Today, our group will present a topic about understanding relative clauses on science and technology. Our group consists of 5 members. My name is Anshirah Eliana, and other group members is Fariha Aisha, Aisha Safia, Nur Natifa, and Nurul Awatif. So our learning objective is, by the end of the lesson, students should be able to identify relative clauses in sentence and differentiate between defining and non-defining relative clauses. Number 2, construct sentences using relative pronouns such as who, which, that, whose, and where to form relative clauses. Number 3, write clear and cohesive sentence incorporating relative clauses to convey So, what are relative clauses? Relative clauses is a sentence that expresses a complete thought, idea, or statement. It contains a subject, which the subject is tell about the sentence, and a predicate, which include a verb and provide more information about the subject, action, or state. So, what is the purpose of a relative clauses? The purpose of relative clauses is give information about the person or thing mentioned. Next, let's see a relative pronoun for subject and object. First, for subject, the noun is the doer of the action. For example, the scientist who developed a vaccine won a Nobel Prize. So here, the relative pronouns is who, which is it's referred to the subject, the scientist. Next, for object, the noun is the receiver of the action. For example, the software that I installed on my laptop is very efficient. So here, that relative pronouns is that refer to the software, which is the software is the object.
What is a relative pronoun? Relative pronoun is a word that connects a noun to a group of words that give more information about it. Some common relative pronouns such as who, whom, whose, which, and that. First, we start with who. Who is used as the subject of a verb and used only for people. It is used to give more information about a person mentioned in the sentence, and it replaces the subject of the relative clause. For example, the scientists who study artificial intelligence are developing human-like machines. Here, who is referred to the scientists and introduce the clause who study artificial intelligence. Second, whom is used as the object of a verb or preposition in a sentence and also used for people. For example, the scientists whom we interviewed work at NASA. Here, whom refers to the scientist and is the object of the word interviewed. Third, whose is used to show possession for people, animals, or things. It tells us who something belongs to. For example, the company whose technology we use is based in Japan. Here, who shows that the technology belongs to the company. There is also an original sentence where two sentences become only one sentence by replacing the word it with whose. The original sentence, we use the technology of a company. It is based in Japan. Next, the word which is used as the subject or object pronoun for things. It introduces a relative clause and connects it to the main sentence. For example, the device which was invented last year can detect disease in their early stage. Here, the sentence which was invented last year gives more info about the device. In other words, which is used to add details about a thing previously mentioned. Lastly, the word that is used as the subject or object pronoun for people, animals, or things. It introduces a defining relative clause, which means the information is necessary to understand the sentence. For example, robots that are used in manufacturing help to reduce human error. Here, the word that are used in manufacturing tells us which robots are used, which means the use of the word that is to give necessary details about the person or things already mentioned. Now let's take a look on how to differentiate between who and whom, as both is used for people. First, we start with who. Who is used as the subject of a sentence or clause, while whom is used as the object. There is a quick tip where we need to use who when the person is doing the action. For example, number 1, the scientist who discovered the new element is famous. Here it shows that the scientist is the subject of a verb discovered. Example number 2, the inventor who created the first computer changed the world. Here it shows that the inventor is the subject of a verb created. On the other hand, we need to use whom when the action is being done to the person. For example number 1, the engineer whom she worked developed a new type of solar panel. Here it shows the object is the engineer of a verb work. The second example, the professor whom they invited to the seminar gave a lecture on quantum computing. Here it shows the object is the professor of a verb invited.
Today, we're going to look at relative adverbs. If you look on the left side of the slide, you will see two key points, which is the first one, relative adverbs, like where, when, and why, can be used to join sentences or clauses. Next, they replace the more formal structure or preposition plus which used to introduce a relative clause. So, we look at the example on the right. The first one is that's the lab in which we conducted our first experiment. The word in which we replace it with where. So becomes that's the lab where we conducted our first experiment. Same goes with the second example and the third example. If you look at the red color, in or at which, we can replace it with where. In or on which, we can replace it with when, and for which we usually use why. Now, let's look more closely at how the relative adverbs where, when, and why are used in real sentences. So, the first one is where. Where introduces a clause that describes a place or location. For example, I know the lab where you conducted your final year project on solar-powered drones. The second one, the report discusses a situation wherein the collected data will be used to improve system performance. Third one, we visited the testing site whereon the robotics team installed their latest prototype. And the last one, our paper examines a scenario wherein machine learning algorithms adapt. Next is when. When is used to describe a time. For example, I remember the day when our robot finally worked on its own. There was a time when new technology caused more problems than it solved. I can remember a time when learning to code felt really hard. There's talk about time when people didn't worry much about data privacy. And the last one is why. Why usually introduce an adjective clause describing a reason. So, it is the reason why I changed my project topic. We don't know the reason why the experiment failed. The reason why this bug keeps appearing is still unknown to us. And the last one, could this be reason why the system keeps crashing during testing?
Now, we are going to dive into types of relative clauses, which are defining and non-defining clauses. Let's talk about defining clauses first. These clauses provide essential information about the noun in the sentence. Without them, the sentence becomes unclear. It does not use commas and specifies which person, thing, or place. Defining clauses commonly use words like who, that, which, whose, and where. Now, let's move on to non-defining clauses. These provide extra information about the noun that isn't essential for the sentence to make sense. We can remove it, and the sentence still makes sense. Here, you can't use that. Instead, you use who, which, whose, or where, and can use commas. So, to summarize, defining clauses are like necessary details, while non-defining clauses are like bonus information. Now, let's apply this knowledge to some examples from science and technology. For instance, instead of saying the app has become very popular among users, we can clarify which app we are discussing by adding a defining clause. The app which tracks your fitness has become very popular among users. This tells us exactly which app we are talking about. Here's another example. The scientists receive a Nobel Prize. By adding a defining clause, we specify who the scientist is. The scientist who discovered the electron received a Nobel Prize. Now, the sentence tells us which scientist we are talking about. Now that we have mastered defining clauses, let's move on to non-defining clauses. These are a bit different. They add extra information to a sentence, but that information isn't essential for the sentence's core meaning. For example, Elon Musk aims to make space travel more accessible. This sentence is clear on its own, but we can add a non-defining clause to provide additional detail. Elon Musk, who is the CEO of SpaceX, aims to make space travel more accessible. Notice the commas around this clause, who is the CEO of SpaceX. That's what makes it non-defining. Here's another example. The CRISPR technology has potential applications in medicine. Adding a non-defining clause, it becomes the CRISPR technology, which allows for precise genetic editing, has potential applications in medicine. The extra information is helpful, but not necessary for understanding the main idea.
Now let's take a look at relative clauses and preposition. So first, what is preposition? A preposition is a word that connects a noun, pronoun, or phrase to other word in a sentence, typically showing a relationship of time, place, or direction. For example, in, at, on, to, and etc. So let's take a look at the example for preposition. The cat is on the table. The preposition is on. She walked to the class. The preposition is to. We arrive at 9. The preposition is at. So now, let's move on to the preposition placement in relative clauses. So there are two ways to write them, which are formal and informal. So informal, the preposition is placed before the relative pronoun, and the informal, the preposition is normally placed at the end of the relative clause. So now let's take a look at the example. For formal English, first one, the app on which user depend crash. The preposition is placed before the relative pronoun, and for the everyday English, the app users depend on crash. The preposition is placed at the end of the relative clause. For the second one, the everyday English, the scientists they work with won a Nobel Prize. The preposition is placed at the end of the sentence, and the formal English, the scientists with whom they work win a Nobel Prize. As we can notice, for the everyday English, the preposition is normally placed at the end of the sentence, and for the formal English, the preposition is placed before the relative pronoun.